Today I'm going to chime in on soulmates and true love.
This episode of Bell Chimes In was inspired by Ethany from the Tarot and Love video series on her channel. Links in the description box, so be sure to check it out.
I think of soulmates as just a natural phenomenon, and there's nothing romantic about it, or at least no more romantic than the phenomenon of reincarnation or the phenomenon of climate change. It's just something that happens in the natural course of the universe's events. So, to begin with, in my worldview, past lives and reincarnation is a thing, it's a reality. Sure, it's a subjective reality. I have no arguments with that. But we need to begin with a few givens before we talk about soulmates and true love. I talked about past lives and reincarnation, at least from my perspective, in a previous Bell Chimes In video. So if you're interested, please check that out first. All right, we're beginning with the premise, as tenuous and subjective as it may be, that reincarnation is real. It happens. And the process is governed by what we'll call karma. Two people or souls can have and interact in such a way that they perpetuate a karmic accounting between them that doesn't balance out at death. So in the next life, they are reborn in such a way, in such close proximity of space and time, that they are going to interact with one another once again. And that's it. That to me is how I would define a soulmate. In one sense, yeah, it's kind of clinical. It's not what Hollywood love stories are made of. I think we romanticize and fantasize about the concept of soulmates because we believe that it will deepen the significance of our love for someone. I don't think you need to label two people as soulmates for their mutual love to hold deep significance. And just because two people are soulmates, it doesn't mean that they're going to belong together or that there could even be an enduring true love between them. Soulmates are two people with tethered karma, and when that karmic accounting balances out, their journey with each other will end. True love, in stark contrast to soulmates, is not a natural phenomenon. True love, I believe, is built stone by stone, built brick by brick with more blood, sweat, and tears than most people today are willing to acknowledge or put in, which is why true love seems to be so elusive. It's not because true love is hard to come by as a natural phenomenon. It's not like a unicorn. True love is a goal, it's an objective. You have to decide you want to achieve true love with somebody, and then you've got to work toward it like any other ambition in life. If you want true love, then you have to put in the elbow grease. Any two people in this world can come together and achieve true love together. But of course, there's going to be different levels of work involved. So if there isn't an innate alchemical compatibility between two individuals, let's say, there can still be true love, but the amount of work and sacrifice, dedication, and commitment that both sides mutually would have to put in might be a lot more than a relationship where there is already a natural alchemical compatibility. But that's just the starting point. Either way, both types of relationships require an enormous amount of work for it to arise to the level of true love. Oftentimes, when there's strong innate compatibility, then a relationship doesn't feel like it's as much of a personal sacrifice. You don't feel like you need to completely change who you are or reprioritize your life around another human being. The funny thing is, if I asked you whether you'd be willing to completely change who you are and reprioritize your life around another human being for a relationship, you would probably say, hell to the fuck no. We're not willing to put in that kind of work and devotion anymore. We don't want to sacrifice who we think we are, our core identity, for another individual, for a partner. And yet, oddly enough, so many of us are more than willing to do just that for a child. We change who we are fundamentally. We change our lifestyles drastically, and we reprioritize our lives around our children, but not around a partner. So then we think, okay, parent-child love is a thing, but true love between two partners is not a thing. That they're two different kinds of love, but they're not. They're similar kinds of love. It's just that we are willing to make these enormous sacrifices of who we think we are, of our own egos for a child. Therefore, a phenomenon of unconditional love can happen, and that love can endure. Whereas for a partner, because of our ego, this is not our flesh and blood, we're not willing to sacrifice who we think we are at our cores. We're not willing to make concessions of the ego for a partner. Therefore, that type of love isn't able to evolve the way the parent child love can evolve. But I don't see them necessarily as two different kinds of love. They're the same type of love. It's we who have a different outlook on that core love. I do believe in soulmates, but I think, and this is just my opinion, of course, I think if one believes in soulmates, then one really needs to keep a clear head about what exactly that indicates. Let's be clear. I'm not saying there are right or wrong definitions of soulmates. I'm just saying that the fact is, when most of us hear soulmate, we run the high risk of putting in too many high expectations. We forget to do the work. We dump all of these unrealistic, like I said, high expectations on this so-called soulmate and expect every kink in the relationship to just naturally and magically work itself out. And then if the kinks of the relationship don't just naturally work themselves out automatically without any effort on our parts, we just come crashing down to such disappointment. And we feel like, oh, that person was not actually our soulmate. And then we go from glorifying somebody as a soulmate to, like I said, a pretty hard crash down into a bottomless pit of despair. I think calling someone your soulmate is almost like putting them on a pedestal. So that's the risk of buying too much into the romanticized concept of soulmates. You place too much emphasis on that natural, magical connection and not enough emphasis on the hard work. So when you don't put in the work and that soulmate connection doesn't rise to the level and achievement of true love, we lose all hope in the concept of love. You don't have to find your soulmate. You have to find someone who values you for what you value about yourself, who challenges you in a way that's loving, compassionate, and yet stimulating so that you're always motivated to strive for advancement of yourself. To me, another imperative characteristic of a healthy relationship is that this person is willing to generously provide for you and you are willing to generously provide for that person. And provide doesn't necessarily mean money, though quite obviously money is included. It absolutely means work, sacrifice, effort. And when you've got two fruits in front of you, you always give the better fruit to your partner. You always keep the lesser fruit to yourself. I think when you love somebody, and this goes way, way beyond romantic love, this is about human love. Love for your fellow brethren. When you love, whether it's a friend, a colleague, a neighbor, or most telling of all, a total stranger, you always take the lesser for yourself and you give the better fruit to the other. I've always found that to be a rather good test of how kind a person's heart is and how much they love humanity. Where a person draws the line, meaning at what relationship, what nature of relationship does a person stop giving the better fruit to the other and taking the lesser for themselves, that reveals how much love they have in their hearts. Is it only your child? You would only give the better fruit to your child. Or is it just your family? Do you always give the better fruit to your family members, your immediate family, and take the lesser fruit for yourself? Or is it your tribe only? Or is it the citizens of your nation, only those of your ethnic group? Or where do you draw the line for when you stop taking the lesser fruit? I do acknowledge that the concept of soulmates and true love does seem to go hand in hand, whether it's romantic love or it's family love, such as parent and child, or siblings, or twins. I do believe twins are two souls. Conjoined twins are also two separate souls, but a bit more evidently than others are soulmates with some interesting karma going on. When we share something intimate, deeply personal, or have a vested personal interest in someone, what follows closely tends to be love, some form of love and amity for that person. And sharing karmic paths is certainly going to be intimate and personal, as intimate and personal as it gets, I would think. So that's why I think the concept of soulmates and true love, or just love, tends to go hand in hand. I do not believe that two lovers who are soulmates are thus automatically meant to be together because they're soulmates. I think that two individuals were meant to sort something out with each other due to their entangled karma as soulmates, but that's pretty much it. Being with someone for life, growing old together, till death do we part, that's a choice. It's a choice you have to make and then a decision that requires execution. It has, in my opinion, nothing to do with being soulmates. Being soulmates is maybe what got you to this point of intersection. But what you do from this point of intersection onward into the future isn't karma from the past, it's karma in the making. If I may chime in here, modern society has progressed to this point where we forget or neglect just how much sacrifice is required to make a relationship work. We've come to associate personal sacrifice with personal weakness. If I make too many sacrifices, then I'm weak or I don't have a backbone. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely do not mean abusive relationships. That's an entirely different issue. I'm just talking about normal, everyday, healthy relationships. We secretly count how many times our partner has said, I'm sorry, and how many times we've said it. And if we've said it more, then that upsets us. I'm tired. I'm overworked. I have other obligations to tend to first. These are the excuses we tend to go to or we give for why we can't make personal sacrifices right now. We also need a partner to prove worthy of trust. They have to prove to be worthy of trust. We can't just have faith and trust. Having faith and trusting on that faith is actually seen as weakness, or worse yet, a form of stupidity. All that being said, I also acknowledge that the issue of trust, faith, and personal sacrifice is much more complicated in modern society than I'm letting on in this chat. Not too long ago, even, neighbors used to trust each other, keep their back porches unlocked, let their kids run around on the streets, knowing full well that the neighbors outdoors will look after their children. Today, we hardly even know the names of our neighbors, and discreetly, maybe not so discreetly sometimes, we even take a hard look at their race and ethnicity if a new one moves in. So, demonstrating trust, faith, and personal sacrifice in relationships is much harder to come by in modern society, I think. And it might have something to do with our collective social karma. I don't know, but that macrocosmic condition of harder to come by trust, faith, and personal sacrifice plays out in quite the same way at the microcosmic level in our romantic relationships. Isn't that kind of interesting? To sum up, do I believe in soulmates? Yes, but not necessarily in a romantic sense. I believe it's just a natural karmic phenomenon and it doesn't really have that sentimentality that we often associate with being soulmates. Do I believe in true love? I believe true love is an aspiration that two people have to mutually commit to working toward achieving. It requires two of equal resolution and determination and both pulling their own weight and working hard and providing for each other generously and giving each other mutual trust, faith, and personal sacrifice for a love to become true love.
Bell Chimes In is a video series on my channel where I chime in about a topic oft talked about, a subject matter that's been making its rounds in circuits of discussion, and I give my opinion, my thoughts, and my perspective. After you've seen the video, I'd love to have you chime in as well to share your opinion, thoughts, and perspective. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you have a totally different experience? You add value when you're part of the discourse. Talk to me, talk to each other. When we're talking, we're acknowledging. And isn't that such an important first step?